Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of Breaking the Blocks. I'm your host, Rachel Pearman. This podcast reminds me of the film Forrest Gump. Do you know why? In that film, do you remember when he said, life is like a box of chocolates, you never know which one you're going to get? Terrible accent. But it is like a box of chocolates, this podcast. I never know what's going to happen every time I get a guest on the show because I don't go in with a set amount of questions. I don't have things written down. I don't have a plan. I just generally talk and listen and we see what comes out. And that is the beauty of the show, that every single episode is different. But one thing that always happens in our show is that we get some great life advice. We get to hear other people's experiences and what they've been through and how they've overcome their challenges. And perhaps we can find inspiration from that and use some of the tips and the ideas that they've had about their lives for our own situations. Today's episode was no exception. The fabulous quilter Trudi Wood joined me today, and she talked about how she had overcome things like depression, loneliness, grief, being dumped, as she said herself in the interview, and how she came up with coping strategies, but how she also learned a lot about herself along the way. So if any of those things have affected you, sorry to hear it, but listen to this podcast. See if you can find some hope, some light at the end of the tunnel. See you on the other side. Well, lovely. I was going to call you Trudi Wood, as in Trudi Woodall. You know the lady who does the makeup, Trini? Yeah, yes. No, Trudi. You're Trudi. You're not Trini, but just as glamorous, darling. Just as glamorous. It is lovely to have you in the studio. Thank you so much for joining us. Trudi Wood, queen of the free motion quilting world, as I call you. UK queen, because I do love Karen as well over in the States. But you are an incredibly talented lady, Trudi, but you're also a really interesting human being, a very good friend, and an all-round good egg. How's that for an introduction?
Oh, that's very humbling.
We aim to humble.
Thank you.
But no, it is lovely to have you here. And, you know, you and I were talking recently and I said, come on, let's get you on Breaking the Blocks, because you've had a lot of blocks to overcome in your life. Like most of us have. But what I think our viewers are going to find really interesting about you, and hopefully inspirational as well, in terms of that you can change your life and you can do something completely different with it. Because I love it when I talk to my guests and they say what they used to do, and I go, excuse me? And you are one of those guests, Trudi. So let's talk about pre your creative full-time job. What did you used to do? This is going to surprise people.
I joined the Air Force.
Now you see, this to me, when you said you were in the Air Force, I was like, what? I mean, of course, I had visions of you flying red arrows.
No.
So what did you do in the Air Force?
So I joined up as an admin clerk. So basically promoted and to personnel admin, which is basically effectively HR. So you're doing everything from pay to honours awards, discipline, filing, secret keeping, all sorts of things, as well as making the tea and all the other good stuff. So yeah, that's effectively what I did do, without giving too many secrets away.
And then you left that.
And my dad was in the Air Force as well. So I remember my dad saying it's not the Air Force that he joined up in. And that's how I felt when I left. It wasn't the same Air Force. So much had changed. And I had an opportunity to leave and still retain my pension rights. So, yeah, I took it. And I then worked for Citizens Advice. And I worked there for a rights charity for nearly 10 years, doing administration, just turning that pile of in into that pile of out and having no real responsibility, less stressful, or so I thought it would be at the time, but that's a completely different story. And then that was only part-time, and I loved it for the fact that it was only part-time, and actually I could take my daughter to school some days of the week that I'd never been able to do before. before she left primary school. So yeah, it was great to go and work part-time. And in that part-time, it meant I had me time back, so I could start doing my quilting for me. However, in that time, I bought a tabletop frame that used a domestic sewing machine and started quilting on a frame, on a short arm frame, it's called. And then people found out a bit about me, and then I was earning more money in my little garden shed than I was at work. So it was a big leap of faith. I had the opportunity to leave, and it was the right time to go.
It is fascinating whenever people, say that they've done these other jobs that are very different, because I do think it's interesting, Trudy, that I always believed that, really creative people who do it for a living, that they had, that side of the brain that was creative. And so the other side that was analytical, that was number orientated, that, worked in kind of, like physics ways, chemistry ways, maths ways, that didn't work for us people as creatives. Maybe that's, I'm basing it on myself because I was always rubbish at those subjects. But it's really interesting how many creative people actually have had careers in numbers, and in things the completely opposite of what you'd imagine. So
Yeah,
I still haven't got to the bottom of that, really.
I think we have, it depends what we're practiced. I was taught to sew by my mum at a very young age, sewing bits of scrap fabric to my Cindy doll, and realizing that you couldn't take the clothes off because you'd stitched them on, and, working out 3-dimensional things and playing. I was always good at art at school. Color was always something I was good at. So that creativity was always there, and I tried all sorts of different crafts. Maths has never been my thing, which is really bizarre because I love accounting. Am I good at doing my own bookkeeping? Well, maybe not when you'd rather be doing something far more creative. You are drawn to that creativity, and I don't think you can ever stop that, because for me, it's something that's inside, and I'm driven to do it. I need, whether it's quilting, whether it's stitching something, whether it's out in the garden with my hands in the soil, potting up plants. There's something inside us that demands that we do that, or whether it's even baking a cake. We're makers, I think, is what it comes down to as a human race. We're just makers.
I agree, actually. Yeah, I think it's part of being human, because there is so much in life that is so stressful and difficult to deal with. And I think that when you get your hands in the soil, it's like people say, if you're feeling stressed, take your socks off and go for a walk in some grass.
Absolutely.
It's grounding, isn't it? It's
It
grounding
is.
ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
something that you have felt that need to do, is to ground yourself in something creative, in a task. I was going to ask you as well, Trudy, that, I mean, very much like me in my prior role to running this business by myself, I was always in TV studios or voiceover studios or wherever with lots of people. It struck me that with you were always around people. So when you're
Yeah.
in the Air Force, and then when you're doing your accounting, and then suddenly you were this person working, as you said, in your shed by yourself. How did you make that transition? Because I found it very difficult.
Yeah, I guess the being on my own was not so much a problem. My parents both worked. I am the typical Gen X latchkey kid, out till it was dark, go out and play, don't, be seen, not heard. Being on your own, you don't mind that. And being deployed, you very much on your own. You're still surrounded by people, but it can be very lonely. So being on my own, not at work, it took me a long time to actually get used to the fact that this is what I do every day. I need to turn up every day. If I want to earn money, I need to turn up every day. You still need those people around you. You still need that creative contact. You still need that social interaction with other people that spark joy and creativity in you. And I really struggled with that in COVID. I shut down in COVID, because living on my own, being on my own, working in the shed at the bottom of the garden on my own, it became like a prison, and I wasn't allowed to go out. I wasn't allowed to see people. I do it before. I've done it before, where I've shut myself down. When I get overloaded, I go inwards and I shut down, and people don't see me, and I disappear. And my friends know my MO, and they will check up on me, and that's fine. And I know I'd done it before, and I knew this time round I couldn't just face being continually locked in. So I volunteered with my church and went out and helped with Love Your Neighbour, which provided food parcels for those people, those families that were not getting the help that they needed in that time. And it was just packing food parcels to start with. And I worked with who is now a great friend, Angela, and she realized that, I wasn't just somebody that could come and pack bags. I could actually organize and manage people and all the rest of it. So, I ended up running the Thursday sessions and stuff like that. And yeah, I guess my RAF career has given me that can-do attitude. You get things done. You don't just go, oh, well, how are we going to do that? No, well, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it like this, and this is what we need, and we just get on with it and do it. So that got me out twice a week seeing people, and I pretty much shut down on quilting because I couldn't cope. That was as much as I could cope with. I found lockdown really, really hard, and I still find it. I've always been an introvert, and very shy, despite what people think about me. I was unbearably shy when I was younger, and I couldn't walk into a pub on my own, things like that. Whether that's a generational thing or I still am quite uncomfortable in big groups of people. I'm the person that's backed up against the back wall, walking her way around the room with her back against the wall. Unless there's somebody I know, I'm still very much, I find peopling too much now. I need that quiet space after lots and lots of people. It's bizarre, but I do need that quiet space, and I'm really comfortable in my own space and my own skin and being on my own.
But that's a good thing, because I was going to say, when you shut down, as you said, when your friends knew that you were sort of going inward with yourself, there's a fine line there, isn't there? Because I remember years ago when I did my therapy, and my therapist said, look, one of the tools you need in your box is to know that you can and that you should reach out to people. Because I joke about it now, but I used to joke with her and say that I was like Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction. When she sits there, turning the lamp on and off, on and off, on and off to Madame Butterfly. Such a drama queen. But I would sit there and really listen to sad music and wail and just want to bring myself even further down, as far as I could go, and beat myself over the head. And she said, you have to learn to reach out. So I don't do that anymore. But it's interesting you were saying, in a way, that that's what you do when you feel overwhelmed.
I do.
But then you're saying that that's a good thing for you.
It is, because I need to separate myself from the overwhelm. But I read something literally yesterday about those people that keep themselves at a distance from other people, that are very strongly independent, and I have been so strongly independent. It's probably because we had to be as children. And, we didn't get, maybe, I'm not dissing my parents or anything, but, times were very different then. We didn't get the attention that maybe we needed to, and we had to solve a lot of those problems ourselves, or not. So, I have had to learn very much so that I need to let people in and let people help me. That's the other thing. It's all very well saying, well, you ask for help, but it's accepting help. which is even harder, to accept help from other people who genuinely love you, and want to help you. But it's really hard. But it's so much better when you do. It really is.
I think what you're describing there is it can be avoidant behavior. You become super independent because you haven't got the love and affection and attention you needed from your parents. And not the thing is, we say this a lot, but I think the generation before us, they were doing the best that they could do in a
Yeah.
lot of cases, but they just didn't know how to do it any different. They were
And
from war
so
baby
are we.
parents.
We're doing the best we can too.
Yeah.
So
Because they haven't had that connection, they absolutely crave it, but it frightens them because of their over independence, because they've had to have that all of their lives. Now, here's the thing. As you say, what you have to do is learn to let people in and to accept people and to not self-sabotage, because what a lot of
yeah,
people do who are avoidant, they self-sabotage relationships. Before they can get hurt, they will hurt somebody else and walk away, and then they feel very regretful and sad later on
yeah.
because they realize, oh dear, I did that. But then they do it again unless they get help. So how have you come to learn? Because it sounds like you could have been on that self-sabotage spectrum.
Yeah. So I was married. I was with him for 23 years. We divorced for his infidelity, and actually, that hurt. Being replaced by a much younger model, that hurt. But I moved on. I felt as though I was better off without him, and that was fine. And then I met somebody else, and we were together for 10 years. And he ended everything after 10 years, saying that he felt I would be better off without him. He was ill, he was ill, and he couldn't see that he was ill. So, but that self-sabotaging came in the way I reacted to being rejected like that. However, it was so much easier to forgive him than to forgive myself.
What was, when you say that self-sabotaging behavior came in, what was that then? Because he'd ended the relationship. So what was your
Oh,
behavior?
just the way I reacted, really. Just, that, hurt people, don't they? That's what they say.
Yes.
So, yeah, I was just so hurt, and I couldn't understand what I'd done to deserve being treated and just dropped, to like a hot coal. And yeah, it was a case of, right, well, if that's the case, then I want you gone, take your stuff. I want you gone. That broke me far more than my marriage did, or the breakdown of my marriage. Yeah, I was broken, utterly broken. And it took me a long, long time to not be broken. I spent 5 years looking backwards at what I'd lost. I couldn't see what I had. Yeah. But they say you shouldn't look back. There's a reason it's called the rear view mirror, and it's small in a car. And I think you have to recognize, and you can't move forward until you recognize that you are looking backwards, and you have to live for now and today and tomorrow, not for what was. Yes, there were so many good memories. Yes, it was a great relationship, but I didn't help him in the way he needed to be helped. And I can't say I regret that, because it's not something I regret. Because I pointed him in the right direction that he needed to go, and that's okay. And he has moved on, and I have moved on, and it's fine. But the growth came in having counselling, in terms of my own self-worth, because I've been rejected again and again and again. yeah, just that rejection, and coping with my own self-worth, and realizing that my self-worth didn't lie in what somebody else thought about myself. It was what I thought about myself, and that I was worthy, and I am a good person, and I am actually a loving person, and kind and generous, and all of those other things that people would say. But acknowledging that and seeing that in yourself was very, very difficult. And you know, the counselling didn't do it all. That helped my self-worth, and that was great. Looking back is one way of regret, remorse, loss, dealing with that loss and the grief that you get in that loss. But you have to make a choice to transform into the future. That's been a slow choice to make, but you know, I'm looking forward. I'm not stagnant in one place. I'm just looking forward. And yes, no, I'm not thriving, but you know, I am living. It's learning to be gentler with yourself, that has made the huge difference to where I am today.
I mean, thank you for being so candid,
Well,
Trudi. But
it's
the thing is that I think there will be people listening who, there's two phases there, isn't there? And two really important things that you said there is, I mean, I was reminded the other day, someone said this quote to me, and I can't remember what the exact quote was, but it's actually from the Joker in the Batman film. And there's a line where he says, somebody one day will come along and break you so badly that no one will be able to break you again. And I thought that was a really interesting phrase because I think there's two parts to that. I think the first part is what you were explaining, that you were so broken from it, but that was because I think you'd been chipped and chipped and chipped and chipped. And so eventually it just broke. And then I think in terms of the Joker, maybe what he's saying is once you're that broken on the floor, well, nobody else can break you, can they? But I think that when you're that broken, if you put the work in and you start to heal yourself, actually no one can break you again, because you realize that you're not the only person who can break you is you,
yeah,
because it's how
absolutely.
you deal with things and how
Yeah,
you feel about things.
and how you react, and learning to stop and think before you react to something, and not just
Yes.
blurt it all out, and you know, all that venomous why. You have to recognize that this is where we're at, and this is the worst it's ever going to get, and actually nobody else can do that to me. I haven't met anybody else, and I haven't made any effort to meet anybody else, but whether I could let somebody else in or not, I don't know. I really don't know. It's yeah, I just don't know.
Well, you're a work in progress. I think we're all works in progress. So I don't think you need to know at the moment. I think that question would come when somebody is there. I think you would be aware of the triggers. I think just going back to something you said there, it's how you deal with things. When I had my hypnotherapy, I remember saying to my hypnotherapist, so will I be able to get rid of all of these things that bring on panic attacks? And he said, no, the triggers are always going to be there, but you just won't react to them in the same way. And
Yeah,
it's so true that,
yeah,
my big thing was insomnia. So now if I go to a hotel room and I lay in bed and I have a moment where I go, ooh, you might not sleep tonight, Rachel. Now that would have sent me into a complete go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, and not sleeping and then panicking. But now I just go, well, if I don't, I'll sleep the next night. And guess what? The brain goes, no, she's not playing. Where's go to sleep? And it's
yeah.
really interesting. So I think, like you say, it's reacting to those triggers in a different way, and it's recognizing how far you've come. And I think that's what you're
Yeah.
saying. You know how far you've come because you've done the work.
A friend once described it as there's a manhole in the street, and you walk up to the manhole and fall down it, and you keep walking up to the manhole and falling down it, until one day you recognize that actually it's a manhole, and you could fall down it. I could take a side step and walk around it, and learning to walk around and past the problem that has always been there, that you now choose not to engage in. So yeah, it is exactly that. It's the work that we do that allows us to change the behaviours that we have had. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the key thing. Another thing that you said earlier, which was really important, is the choice. It's making that choice to
Mm.
change your own behavior.
Yeah.
And as you say, that's not just to help others around you, because as you said, there was maybe some self-sabotage, there was rage, there was anger, but it's actually the most important person that we should make a choice for is for ourselves. It's that whole thing, I think, it reminds me of the plane analogy. Put your oxygen mask on before you try and help the person next to you.
Mm.
Because if you don't put that mask on, you're not going to be of help to anybody else. So I think
Absolutely.
some people might think it's a really selfish thing to do, but it's not. You
No.
have to be the first person that you look after, because you are the one living your life.
Last year, business was really quite slow, and I had to make a choice. Do I go and get another job? But my mum needed caring for, and I had to make that choice. Do I take that time to care for my mum, or do I use all of my time to go out and get another job? But I love what I do. I love my mum as well. I need to look after me, and what makes me happy is what I do. So that is looking after me. But actually, I need to honour my mum and look after her, because there is nobody else to do it for her. My brother lives in France. My mum is on her own as well. So, it's a case of, well, we'll do what we can for now. And when it becomes too much, then we meet that challenge when we need to. But we don't need to meet it now. We just need to do what we can do now in this minute. And in this minute, that means me caring for my mum when she needs that care. So yeah, it's and being acknowledging that was a conscious choice. It's and one I did willingly, because it's part of my faith to do that.
Yeah.
I know you've had lots of conversations with other people that have been, very anti the church and things like that. But I only found faith in the last 8, 9 years. So, for me, that's something I can do gladly. Uh, and it was faith and a dear friend who helped me find faith that got me through healing everything else, and finding forgiveness, not only for other people, but for myself. Yeah.
I want to pick up on something there that you said, because you and I had a conversation about this a while ago about forgiveness and,
Yeah.
forgiving other people. And by not forgiving those people, you are drinking this bottle of poison that you're carrying around with you and expecting that person to die. I
Yeah.
mean, not literally, physically, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I have only just started to understand that concept of forgiving other people, but I do understand now it is about letting go of bitterness and anger. But you and I had a
Yeah.
conversation that was actually about forgiving ourselves and how
Yeah.
difficult that is.
It is. Yeah, it really is. So I didn't speak to my mum for 2 years, and I went through an act of forgiveness. I was encouraged to do that and encouraged to forgive other people, which, as I say, my last partner was really easy to forgive. My mum was a bit harder, but I just kept doing it. It's got nothing to do with what they did. It's about acknowledging what they did and letting that go. They've done that. Forgive them, move on, let it go. Just, you can't hold on to it forever, because if you do, it just creates that bitterness, and it's that bitterness that kills you and not them. But forgiving ourselves is so much harder. Why do we find it easy to forgive one person, yet we can't do it for ourselves? On what level are we judging ourselves if we're not judging that other person? It's hard. It's really, really hard. But I think we touched on it earlier. Our parents made the best decisions that they could at the time, and we are doing the best we can at this time, with the knowledge that we have, with the upbringing that we have, with the experiences in life that we've had. And we have to accept that we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And that's okay, because life's not meant to be perfect. It's, if you can forgive so many other people, why can't you forgive yourself? How can you love yourself if you're holding all these things against yourself, you did this, you did that, you behaved this way, you weren't a good whatever. Actually, we're doing the best we can, and that's okay. You have to love who you are, who you're becoming, because like you say, we're a work in progress. We're growing, and we have to grow. I sent you a reel earlier today about trees growing in both directions, and they cannot grow up into the light without growing down into the deep dark things. And as
Such a
people,
brilliant,
yeah,
yes.
it was such an amazing
Yeah.
analogy of how we need to do that work and see those deep dark things to be able to be that lovely light, humble, polite, quiet person.
And it is hard work, isn't it, Trudy?
Yeah,
Because I think sometimes when we talk about the healing journey, people can think it's all roses and rainbows. I mean, it's not, it's more thorns, quite frankly, and lots of
yeah,
bleeding. And there are some lovely roses along the way, and then it suddenly turns dark again. And I think that's a
yeah.
really important thing. I saw a quote from Jay Shetty today on Instagram, and he said, it's okay to feel happy today and really sad tomorrow. It's okay
Mhm.
to feel calm today and very anxious tomorrow. On your healing journey, if you're doing the work, you will have bad days. You will slip back into bad habits. You will question yourself. And then
Yeah,
you'll have really good days. But that's normal. If you're having really good days and you have bad days, I think it's because you maybe are triggered by something, or you remember something about yourself, or you're questioning yourself. You're asking questions, aren't you? And that's the main thing in life that we have to do, I think. Keep
yeah,
asking those questions, but also try and find the answers.
yeah. I mean, I would never have thought this deeply in my younger days. I used to flit through life, and I was on, I was on this trajectory, and well, I wasn't. I wasn't on a trajectory. I just, I bimbled through life, and life just happened, and I had high standards, and um, eh, I expected everybody else to have those high standards. And now I look back and think I was so highly strung. As a young adult, I was so highly strung, as well as being very nervous and shy and everything. But now I'll talk to anybody. I really don't mind. And engaging with people, because without them, who would we be?
Exactly. Exactly. Let's just go back to your faith then. I mean, it's interesting you said I've talked to lots of people who are anti-church. I was racking my brains and thinking, who? I know that Ben Millett, obviously, had left his Mormon faith,
Yeah,
but I think the Mormon faith is quite different too, because
yeah.
it's a Christian faith, isn't it,
It's a
Trudy?
Christian faith. I'm an Anglican.
Yeah, yeah.
It's.
My parents-in-law they are part of a Baptist church. And they will occasionally bring little booklets for me, and they will speak lines of text and say these things. Although it's very sweet because they are nearing the end of their days. And so I think they're sort of preparing, they feel like they're paving their way, bless them. But they say all that sort of thing. Now, I'm not really, that doesn't do it for me. That just doesn't touch me somehow.
No,
But put me in Barcelona, and one of the first things I will do is say, I need to find a little church to light a candle. It's just always something I do. And actually, what's really sweet is now that my daughter, who's 19, whenever we go somewhere, she'll go, do you think there's a church? And we light a candle together. Now, that's as far as it goes. I don't go on a Sunday. I don't go and sing hymns. I don't read the Bible. I just don't. I've not been brought up with it, although my mother was quite semi-religious. But I do understand the concept of faith, of having something to look for, to guide you, to feel that you belong. It's part of a community. And there is something for me, I'm more on the spiritual side of things,
yeah.
but I do find beautiful old churches very calming. And it's something I like to do.
There's a presence in a beautiful old church. There really is a real sense of peace and calm.
Yeah.
And that's what faith brings to me. It's not about the religion. It's never been about the religion. It's been about the relationship. And it's a very personal relationship for everybody. The community that I found and the healing that I found, and being loved by people, whether that was, a hug, are you okay? Come to dinner. can I get you a cup of tea? I admit that there was one Sunday in our old church. So we're in a different building now, and in our old church, and I was still in that very, very broken phase, and songs would trigger it, and they they had inside a big old pre-Victorian church a wooden shed that was for mothers and babies to go and breastfeed or whatever, or calm the children down. And I was in there just bawling my eyes out, and the vicar came up to me, and it's like it's like big Yorkshireman, and don't do women crying, and can I get you a cup of tea? It's like, no, I'll be fine. But people understanding that you are broken, and that's okay, and we're here for you. And in that, listening to sermons and listening to hymns and modern faith music, understanding that you're loved unconditionally regardless. What does that look like? And it makes you challenge, well, how do I love other people? How do I love and honor my mother? How do I love my children? Have I loved them the best that I could? Well, actually, no. And in terms of that forgiveness, I approached my son and said, I don't think I've been the best mother for you. I'm really sorry for some of the things that have happened. And he's like, what are you talking about, Mum? You're great, Mum. But in my head, it's that self-talk again, going, yeah. So what I found was healing and peace. And no, I don't read my Bible very often, and I'm not very good at it. But yes, I love going to church on a Sunday. I love my church community. I love my friend Di, who brought me to faith. My mum's like, I'm not into Bible bashing, and I didn't grow up in a Christian environment. So, and it's not about reading passages to people or anything. And it's about loving them in the way that you can. And for me, that's giving of myself, whether it's teaching, quilting for other people, putting all that love into a quilt, gifting quilts. I love to gift quilts to people that are sick. And we've had quite a few of them in our church, and I've just felt this need to make a quilt for them, and prayed over it, and had it blessed, and given it to them as a gift. And that, I know, makes a difference to them, because people that I now know that I gifted quilt to will say, you didn't know us. And it's like, but I didn't need to know you. I just needed to love you, and this is the way I can love you, whether it's, doing that, or, as I say, looking after my mum, or just talking nicely to the lady at the checkout, and saying to somebody, your hair looks great. It's bright pink and I love it. Or, that coat is fantastic. Or whatever it is, your smile has made such a difference to my day. That's loving people, isn't it?
It is. And it's such a great feeling. I was in Starbucks the other day. I'm not sponsoring them, by the way, not getting paid for this advert. But I was there in Peterborough, and this young guy was behind the counter, very jolly. And he said, are you paying on the app? And I said, yes. And then he said, so of course they know your name by the app. So he said, oh, hello, Rachel. Oh, you've got a free drink. So I said, oh. And he said, would you like to take it? And I said, yes, I would. And I was like this. And Brandon was next to me, who was 18, my daughter's friend. And so I was buying him a coffee. So this boy said, well, he said, would you like to make them both larges? Because then you get a free large, but I don't want you to be squabbling over the drinks. And then I said, you're a very good salesman, aren't you? Because now if I choose two larges, I'm actually now paying for it. We were both going to get smalls. And okay,
Yeah.
And we were laughing and joking. And he went, yes, I am. I'm being very corporate right now for Starbucks. We had this great conversation. And then I said, I should tell your manager how good you are. And he said, well, you can if you want. She's in the back. And I went, bring her out then. And then he looked at me and he said, what? I went, bring her out. And Brandon knows to expect this of me. So this manager came out and she said, can I help you? I said, I want to make a complaint about your barista. And then she looked and I said, I don't really. I said, I just want to tell you, you have got an amazing member of staff. And he stood there and went, oh, thank you. And I said, when people say, do you want an extra shot of coffee? I said, he is the extra shot. He has the extra shot. And I said, you need to look after him because he's just a step above. And he was glowing.
Yeah.
And I was glowing because I felt I was interacting in this fantastic conversation. The manager was glowing because she hadn't had a complaint. She'd had someone say something nice. Brandon was just laughing at me going, you are crazy. But as we walked out, I said, isn't that great though? I made his day,
Yeah.
And in a way,
And
he
it's,
made my day because he gave me that opportunity.
and that's, it's better to give than receive. Giving brings so much joy to the person that is giving.
Yeah.
And, and that, to me, that's, that just, if I can give something, then I will.
Yeah.
It might not be money or anything like that, but, if I can make a quilt for somebody, I will.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, just tell me, Trudy, about your creativity then and what it actually does for you. I mean, do you feel now in your healing journey and that you've got further down the line, one, do you shut down less these days? And two, if you shut down to probably because you're recognizing a bit of overwhelm, do you then leap into your quilting or does that still get closed down as well?
I probably can approach it more. I'm less likely to walk away from the quilting.
That's good.
But I'm more likely to give myself time to go, what is this? Why do I feel like this? Is it because I've got so many quilts waiting and there's not enough time and, or is it because I'm just tired and I need to give myself time again? So I'm more likely to look and go, I need this time. This time is more important for me than it is to work myself through the bones. Actually give yourself time to rest. It's okay. You weren't very well at the weekend. You had an awful cold. You felt rubbish. And actually you can rest. You can rest. You can't rush back into doing something full pelt. You have to take it as a slow build and, do it slowly, slowly, slowly rather than full pelt. Yeah. So recognizing it is half the battle, really. It's like depression. I've suffered from depression for many years, and recognizing what that looks like to me has helped me know that this is okay. It too will pass, and also it helps you recognize it in other people too. So you've got a greater understanding of how somebody might be feeling or where they might be at and how then to help them more through that. So, and it's a great thing you said in one of your other interviews was that you can't go around things, you have to go through them. You just, got to go through it, haven't you?
I put a quote by Winston Churchill once in one of the newsletters, which said, if you're going through hell, keep going. And at first you can read that and go, what? But what he's saying is, if you're going through hell, keep going through it and you'll come out the other end. I think if you try and escape it, you'll always be in it somehow.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
you have to go through these things, but you have to feel your way through these things. You cannot avoid them.
Going back to what I said earlier, all of these things, all of these people that we meet and all of these challenges that we have in our lives and all of this work that we do, it makes us who we are today. And, it makes me want to say, don't underestimate this, little white-haired person that lives on her own, works on her own in a shed at the bottom of the garden, or you or anybody else. Don't make judgments about them and assume, that somebody's life is absolutely dandy, because we can still smile through it, we can still do all of those things, we can still function, but doesn't mean to say it's easy functioning, and doesn't mean we haven't battled to be there. So
Yeah. And I think just, following on from that if you are listening right now and you do feel very, very broken, if something has happened to you, which has put you into a very dark place, if you do the work, keep questioning yourself, maybe get some therapy, or just keep listening to yourself, your higher self, doing what you need to do, you will get through it. You will. And you won't be the same person at the end of it. But actually, you might be a better person because you will learn those triggers. You'll learn about your behaviors. You'll learn not to fall down that manhole cover again.
Absolutely.
Better times are ahead. And sometimes, well, I don't believe it's sometimes. I think that, if we need to be broken, we need to be broken. If there are patterns that you just keep repeating, you need to be broken by them. Absolutely. Something awful needs to happen to get you out of that pattern. And I believe that's what the universe does. It puts us into situations again and again and again until one day you get the lesson.
Absolutely. Life keeps happening until you realize that you've got to do something different. If it's still the same, you can't expect it to change without changing something yourself. So make the change, be the change. You've got to do that. You can't just expect it to all change all by itself.
It won't.
Talk to your doctor and get help, because asking for help isn't weakness, it's a strength, and that takes a lot of strength.
Well, Trudi, I wish you continued success on your healing journey. I think you've come an awful long way. Like I say, we've had lots of private conversations and you've backed everything up by what you've said today, but it does go very deep. The wounds go very deep. And I know the struggles you've come through and the darkness you felt. And what you've just said today, I hope will really resonate with people that, there can be change, there can be hope. Grab something to cling on to, whether that be faith, whether that be a friend, a group, whatever it is. Just keep going through it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you as a final question, what I'm going to ask you, Trudi? I always ask at the end. Do you have a motto?
Do I have a motto? A motto to live by. If you're going to have one, have a big one.
Is that the motto? If you're going to have one, have a big one.
Have a big one.
Hello?
That's a big quilt, whether it's a large coffee, whatever. It's got to make you smile, hasn't it? Have a big smile.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't know where my mind went there for a second. But
well, no, it's fine.
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't take life so seriously.
No. Go and get yourself a big one.
Yeah, have a big one. Yeah, live large. It's I don't live as large as I could, or I'd like to, but you know what? I've got a big long arm.
Oh, if anybody's listening to the podcast now, I go, what's Rachel doing? Rachel is now speechless. This never happens. Okay, I like it. Okay, I shall live by that motto. I shall live by it.
Live it large.
Live it large. Thank you so much, Trudi, and thank you for being so honest and open. And
my pleasure.
Brokenness is fine. It's fine.
Brokenness is fine.
Smash it open, and you see everything. It's all there in the light.
It's there in the light. And actually, when you put it back together, those little gaps shine light out, don't they? So,
Well, they do, but also as well, I discovered, I can't remember the name of it now because it's Japanese. So there's a Japanese art where they put vases and things back together sealed with gold.
Yeah.
So it becomes a more beautiful object with all of these cracks filled with gold.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're all much better for having been broken and putting it back together and doing that deep work. So yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go and have a big coffee now. Thank you, Trudi.
That's okay.
Just before you go, lovely listener, can I ask you a favour? If you have a friend who you think would enjoy listening to this podcast, would you mind please telling them about it? It helps me to spread the word, and you never know, they might get a life lesson out of it, or at the very least, just have a lovely 40 minutes of relaxing time for themselves. The second thing to say is that if you have enjoyed this, it would really help me if you would give me a little quick like or a comment, especially if you're listening on one of the podcast platforms. It just means that when anybody lands on the page, they can see that people have reviewed it, they've liked it, enjoyed it, and got something out of it. So if you wouldn't mind leaving me a review, that would be amazing. And the final thing to say is that if you are a business and you're thinking, how do I get my message out there? Well, you could do it on this podcast. All you have to do is reach out to me, rachel@breakingtheblocks.com. The details are below in the box. Thank you so much to everybody for listening and enjoying and saying the lovely things that you're saying.